Today on Dirt Road Cred, we've got an exclusive interview with Jeep's own Chris Piscitelli on the 12 for 12 drops, everything that excited him designing it, as well as maybe some future plans for the Wrangler and Gladiator. Let's hop right into it because this is a Dirt Road Cred exclusive, and we'll give him a chat here. We might have had a chance to connect a little bit out in Moab. I think we got to meet each other a little bit, but we ended up having dinner with Vinny. But for our audience,
Yes,
would you mind introducing yourself and kind of your role at Jeep so they can get a good grasp of what you do for Jeep?
sure. So my name is Chris Piscitelli, and I'm the senior manager of Jeep Exterior Design. So my kind of role and responsibilities right now are Wrangler and Gladiator, and then I also kind of my night job, if you will, has been for the last uh, I don't know 14 years now working on all the EJS concepts. So
Okay. So you're
it's
you're
good
the
time.
you're a lot of the brainchild behind those EJS concepts, which we love. A lot of those really cool concepts that you guys came up with. I think one of the things we wanted to talk about today is you are also very much behind the 12 for 12 program for the Wrangler and the Gladiator. Tell me what the thought process was to do the 12 for 12. Obviously, a lot of our audience knows because we do the release every month with you guys, or we kind of
Sure.
shoot the content. But what was the thought process? Why do a 12 for 12 and kind of maybe a little bit of background on your thoughts to start that program up?
Sure. So we always, as a product design studio, we always have lots of ideas flying around. So there's always stuff on the walls. It's kind of always an open kind of assignment to, hey, if you come up with a cool idea, let us know. And we're always just watching, both trend watching. We're super plugged into our own history. So when the assignment came down that there was a want to do this 12 for 12, it was super aggressive. It was one of those things, typically, and in the past we've done a few per year. We do
Sure.
these quote unquote buzz models, right? So when it was like, hey, we want to do one drop every month, more like like a shoe drop from Nike or something, it was like, oh man, this is a huge undertaking. But it was also really exciting because it meant that we could really kind of just focus, buckle down. Everybody kind of knew the task, knew the assignment, and let's go, And so we opened it up to the team. Actually, we opened it up to the whole design team outside of Jeep, the whole design studio. So that includes Ram, Chrysler, Dodge, interior, exterior, and just said, hey, cool Jeeps, show us what you got, and focus primarily on the Wrangler to say, hey, the history, and I gave everybody my nerdy, history lesson of all things Jeep. And said, hey, lean into history, lean into the future, just lean into something cool, show us what you think. And we got a ton of ideas, which was really cool that we were able to kind of pepper the walls. We have a design dome here, and by the time we reviewed it, we had something like 300 feet of just like wall to wall wallpaper of different ideas, and it was really cool to see what everybody kind of came up with. From guys like me who are really plugged into our history and our heritage. To some of our younger designers who don't necessarily know the history or care that much, but just know what's cool and what they think. So it was really cool to see those two types of attitudes and kind of viewpoints come together into something that was a holistic picture of what we could do. 12 drops for each month. So I'm sorry, so 12. Uh, one drop per month for 12 months.
Yeah, yeah. No, we've been excited to see them, but I can understand how much work that had to have been on top of, like you said, the buzz models. Or I know typically in a single year there'll be a few of those buzz models, or a limited run. So that was you didn't stop doing that. You just added this on top of it too.
Right, right.
So yeah, and like you said, you plugged into more of the history, the heritage, the recent Laredo model that came out.
Mhm.
That one was probably one of our favorites. What has been maybe one of your favorites so far? What's one that really stood out for you that has been dropped so far? Don't give us anything for the next
Sure,
ones,
sure.
but
I think one of my personal favorites was Rewind, just
yeah,
because that started as the brainchild of an EJS concept we did a few years ago, and we didn't really think too hard about it at the time because it was just like a conversation of, hey, we should do this, and it'd be fun to lean into our own. It started as when people think historic Jeeps or old Jeeps or vintage Jeeps, immediately, anybody who's of a certain era will think CJ, right?
yep,
Or, an older Jeep. Or when we say history, immediately everybody thinks the MB, right, or the
sure,
CJ2A. Like things that are like really historic flat fenders. But for guys like me who are, 80s babies, it brought back memories of high school, right?
Yeah.
So when we originally talked about this idea, and Vince and I are the same age, so we were like, you know what? Why don't we do a historic Jeep that is based solely in what's history to us, which is 80s, 90s, Taco Bell,
Right.
vibes,
Right.
right?
Right.
So we were bouncing all these silly ideas off of each other, and that became the rewind concept. And when we dropped that at EJS, the amount of positive feedback that we got was like staggering.
Yeah.
And so we really kind of started taking it seriously after that. Like this is something we should consider. And then when the 12 for 12 thing came up, we were like, that one needs to be one for sure. So seeing that one kind of get productionized and come through and retain, so many of the vibes that the concept had, because it's easy to do something as a one off.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
But when you really kind of run it through the production machine and get serious about it, and have to get with material suppliers and do all these things, that you're not just cutting up a ski jacket to make inserts for the seats. It actually has to be something that's real. That's where the real work starts. So it's amazing to see that the team was able to really kind of come together and build out something, production versus something that was a concept, and see that retain so much of the good vibes. I was really excited about that.
Kind of narrowing
Sure.
down the 300 feet of ideas on the wall, how did you pick which 12 for 12s were going to become a reality, and like how hard was that process? Because I'm sure if you guys had, another few years or could drop 10 a month, I'm sure so many different trims would have become a reality, or an unlimited budget to put them into production,
Right.
right?
Right. Well, and you have a good point. So timing is a big thing, right? So to be able to do it in the time that we had, which was not a lot to begin with, that limits certain amounts of what you could do. So when we decide on a new paint color, right, there's a development process to that. When we decide on really aggressive decals, even, it's like to do some of that, it takes time to map stuff like that out. So that was part of it. So that would be like your big funnel, right? To say, okay, what can we actually do in the time that we have, right?
Sure.
And then really it was kind of making sure that all 12 that we've done, or that's in the process of being done, had distinct vibes, right? So that
Yep.
some of them were history, some of them were just more avant-garde, right? Some of them were just different ideas, to make sure that each one of them felt personal, right? Each
Sure.
one of them had kind of that same magic to it, that is not just like, oh, and this one has a stripe on it, right? It's like there's
Yeah.
got to be a
Yeah.
little bit more that like that kind of custom feel to it, so that it's really special. So that was really the kind of the beginnings of how we started plotting them out, not only what we were doing, but when we would be dropping them, so that each one
Yeah.
had kind of a different vibe from the last one that came out.
And that's what I've heard too a little bit, kind of meeting with some of the folks when we were out in the Rubicon Trail was, Laredo, for that to come out, that was a complete brown interior. So the amount
Right.
of time that takes to actually get that design, the color right, and then produce it, I think that's a
Yeah.
lot of like what we're trying to tell our audience too, is sometimes it's not as easy as just point and click and you guys have a magical warehouse that can just pop out all these products. It does.
I wish it was.
I I've heard it, even paint can take 9 to 10 months to get a paint color approved by the time it's done. So it's definitely a bigger task to kind of get all that done. But yeah, I know we've been really excited to see all of them. You brought up the Rewind. We love Rewind so much. We built our own Gladiator. That's the Mojave
I
Vice,
saw it.
and that thing
Rad.
blew up. People love that thing. So I guess when we're talking about the 12 for 12s, was there anyone that you would have liked to see produced that's not going to go into production for one of these 12 for 12s that you think would have been just a killer one that maybe didn't make it, but you really wanted it to?
Yeah. Oh, there's a bunch of stuff on the wall that was so custom, that's like, man, I would love to do that. I don't know how we pull it off. One that didn't make it into the 12 for 12 was a really, it was a super rad design. You know the old AMC logo? I think we used it from, God, 70 to the late 80s. It was the triangle with the
Yep.
square, the
Yep.
red, white, and blue. So it was it was a color combo that had that kind of, if you think of a Jeep from a side view, it was that. So from the A pillar, including the header forward, was all red, and then a white swatch, and
Mm,
then blue in the back. So it was this giant, AMC Jeep rolling logo. And
wow.
it was super complex to try and pull that off, as far as you'd really need to do a custom paint job.
Yeah.
So it was intense, and it was like, all right, well, this is rad. I don't know how we do this. And then uh, the Red Bull Rally came around, and Nina Barlow was driving a Gladiator, and so we managed to say, you know what, let's use this. So we actually ended up doing her livery for that Jeep, which I believe she won in that Jeep. So it's out there. It's not a production model, but we still managed to make it something that's out and about, and it turned out super cool. Seeing that thing again as a giant rolling logo of our
Yeah.
history was kind of cool.
No,
So
that's really cool. Yeah, I know like as the tail end of the 12 for 12, we have three more of these drops. I know Laredo, that one took quite a bit of time obviously to get the whole interior to get all that dialed in. Are the last three, are you most excited about those? Are you most excited about the tail end three, or like were those any inkling to how much time or
yeah.
how much design went into it?
Yes and no. I think, like I mentioned, they were all kind of planned out as a whole, right?
Okay.
So I wouldn't say that the last three are like, they took the longest to execute. They were more just again trying to place them so that each one feels, kind of personalized and specific to the time that it's dropped, but also just kind of works well with the other nine, right? As far as am I excited about them? Yeah, there's some cool stuff coming. Not only with the kind of the last three of these specific drops, but what we've learned through doing this, right, with the 12 for 12, it's made us very good at reacting quick, really streamlining the process as far as if we have a cool idea, putting it into production. I'd say if you pitched that a couple of years ago to say, hey, we want to do something and like turn around really quick, I think it'd be a struggle just in the sense of like not having done it. Now we're all seasoned pros,
Yeah,
as
right,
far
right.
as
Yeah.
like, all right, let's get after it. So yeah, the next three are very cool. And then what's to come in the future after post 12 for 12, I think we still have lots of ideas, and so kind of leaning into some of those very kind of doable, very limited run type of vibes. I think that's something that will definitely kind of continue, and just pushing the limits of what is your typical kind of limited production buzz model. So yeah, if anything, what I'm most excited about isn't necessarily one specific of the 12 for 12. It's just kind of what we're capable of now that we've done it, right? So
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
should be cool.
it's definitely been a huge change, like you said. I mean, we've been in the JLs and JKs and every model and generation Jeep, but to see something like this, the last time I can remember happening, and it wasn't anywhere near this scale, was the end of the JK. JK, we saw Golden Eagle, we saw the Dragon editions, all the specialty editions there. But I'm imagining that's pretty cool for what you guys will be able to do in the future with the buzz models, limited editions, and maybe making it even crazier. Because if you can pull this off in 12 months, I'm sure there's been a lot of late nights for you and your entire team trying to get this stuff done. I can't imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, for sure. But it's all good stuff. It's one of those things where honestly we're the only brand who could get away with something like this.
Yeah.
We have, the history, but we also have a sense of humor, right? So, I like to think that some of that comes through in the buzz. I don't know who else would do something so ridiculous as some of the stuff that we've done, both with the Moab concepts, but then you see it come into production, and it's like we love what we do, and
Yeah.
hopefully that comes through in the end product. That it's not just a four wheels and an engine, right? It's more, right? We put a lot of love into these things, even when it's down to something like a buzz model versus an all new model, right? It's
Yeah.
that level of nerdiness that we all seem to have in the studio to kind of lean into things like this.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's as crazy as the Jeep community. We're the same. We notice little things like
So.
when you guys did the white cap, did you guys get any inspiration from the Tuxedo Park CJ5 for the white cap?
We might have.
Okay.
We might have.
Because like
Yeah.
when we tried to guess that, and I was like, there is no way this is the yeah. So yeah, we were trying to guess, and we play on the old school nameplates too. We try and build Jeeps. Obviously, we built a 41 edition when you guys came out with that color into a World War II edition. We've done the rewind, and we try and give each of our Jeeps a themes too. So we can do it a bit differently because we're not trying to make tens of thousands of
Sure.
them. We can do a
Right.
custom one off and do really cool wraps
Yeah.
and livery on there too. But it's really neat to talk to you too, kind of about all this and how excited it is for the future too. Because obviously we've been to the JL for quite a good amount of years now. So I'm thinking, maybe the new Wrangler's coming out soon. I know we probably can't talk about it a little bit more, but it's bound to come up at some point, right? Some of your thoughts and your take on the enthusiasm of being on this team right now in Jeep's history. So, like you said, a few years ago, it might not have been possible to do something like this, but now in the JL, the JT, like kind of what your take is being a part of that and what you've enjoyed kind of been being able to do with the JL and the JT platform.
Oh yeah, it's a good time to be a designer with JL and JT, honestly, because it's an awesome product. But again, like I mentioned, we're some of the few who can get away with certain things, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I think it'd be a lot harder to pitch on a car that didn't have such an enthusiast backing. I mean, we have one of the most customizable vehicles in the world, right? So you have people who don't just view it as a product. It's part of the family, right? They take it home and then, spend their time, their money, on personalizing it and making it their own and making it even more capable and, pulling the doors and the roof off and, really going after that. And to me, that makes me lean that much harder into, kind of not only trying to anticipate people's needs for what they want to see in both, today's car and the next generation, but also like kind of keeping that form follows function idea at top of mind, right?
Yeah.
So that at the end of the day, this is an enthusiast vehicle, right? You make a commitment when you drive a Wrangler or a
Absolutely, you do.
Gladiator, right?
Yeah.
You're not there for it to be the most of anything except for the most capable and honestly like one of the most personalizable cars, right?
Absolutely.
It's a product that is an extension of the user, right? So to me, being involved now and like having been involved in kind of the JL as it kind of came about, the JT as it came about, and now working on future ideas for the next generations of these vehicles, it's awesome,
Yeah.
and for someone who's a fellow enthusiast, and who like lives this stuff day and night, it's cool to just be able to have a say in what happens, to the future, right? So
Yeah.
it's cool. It's very cool.
That's
I'm
awesome.
lucky.
Yeah, you're very lucky, Chris. We appreciate the time. I know we got to jump off the call here, but it's been a great experience to chat with you, and hopefully we can have a lot more conversations like this. And for all of our fans, just thank you so much, Chris, from everyone here at Dirt Road Cred, and we look forward to speaking again in the future.
Thank you guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Well, what an interview that was. How cool was that to be able to talk to Chris Piscitelli there with Jeep Corporate and kind of his thoughts on the 12 for 12. It's neat to hear that background of they had over 300 feet of ideas in the dome for the marketing and the design team. I mean, can you imagine trying to think of some of that stuff? It's neat to be able to talk to him too, as well as on his excitement and his true dedication to the brand. You can hear just by the references he made in that interview how dedicated he is to the brand and some of those little kind of smaller pieces in these 12 for 12s that are really reminiscent of Jeep's past. It was cool to hear all of it, and I am excited for those last three ones. If the Laredo is any inkling of what the 12 for 12 has to offer, there's some really cool ducks to come in the future, and I think even more so in the next generation Wrangler and Gladiator. But thank you guys so much for watching. This has been a Dirt Road Cred exclusive. We're going to be meeting with some of their team here shortly out of the Toledo Jeep Fest, and we're excited to talk to those guys out there. But this has been one that we've been wanting to do for a little while. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to stay up to date and get detailed information from Jeep themselves, be sure to subscribe to Dirt Road Cred if you aren't already. We'd love to have you here anyways, so you can watch our news, our reviews, and all of our latest builds. But thank you guys so much for watching. This isn't our typical studio here of the background of some of our shipping area, but Ryan's behind the camera. I'm here talking to you, and we want you to get out there and earn yours.